Every generation produces two kinds of men, those who bend and those who break. And then, once in a while, history gives us something rarer, something almost unnatural, a man who does not break at all, no matter the pressure, no matter the suffering, no matter the ridicule. His spine does not bend, his will does not collapse, his path does not falter. He becomes what the ancients called unshakable, a force of nature disguised in human form. And what separates him from all others is not talent, not luck, not some supernatural gift. It is discipline. Discipline is the code that makes a man unbreakable. Discipline is the silent law that governs the rise of every empire, the structure behind every enduring legacy, the secret blood that flows through the veins of all men who win without excuse. If you study history, you will find this truth everywhere. The Roman legions were not made of men with extraordinary strength. They were made of ordinary men forged by extraordinary discipline. They could march 50 miles with armor on their backs, fight all day without retreat, and die without complaint. Why? Because they obeyed the code. The Spartan warriors, too, were not invincible because of their size or weapons. They were invincible because of their unbreakable training, their willingness to embrace pain daily, their refusal to deviate from the code of discipline. And in the modern world, the entrepreneurs, leaders, visionaries who carve their names into eternity do not do so because life is easy for them. They do so because they built a fortress of habits that made them untouchable. Now you must ask yourself, what is this code? How does a man live in such a way that his discipline becomes unshakable, that his willpower becomes automatic, that his path becomes unstoppable? The first thing you must understand is this: discipline is not punishment. Discipline is freedom. Discipline is not the chain that binds you, it is the key that releases you from weakness. Weak men confuse freedom with indulgence. They think that doing whatever they want, whenever they want, makes them free. But indulgence is slavery to impulses, and impulses always betray you. True freedom is the ability to command yourself, to control your appetites, to govern your emotions, to act on principle rather than pleasure. And that freedom comes only through discipline. Consider this. A man without discipline is tossed around by life like a ship without a rudder. He reacts to temptation. He reacts to moods. He reacts to pressure. He reacts to other people's opinions. And because he is always reacting, he never leads. He is pulled in every direction, yet arrives nowhere. But the man with discipline, the man who obeys the code, he commands himself first. He becomes his own master. And once a man can master himself, he can master anything. But let us make this practical. What does the code look like in the life of a man who never breaks? It begins with clarity. A disciplined man is not confused about his purpose. He knows what he is building. He knows what he must avoid. He knows what he must embrace. His life is not an accident, it is designed. Without purpose, discipline feels like torture. With purpose, discipline feels like alignment. This is why Napoleon Hill wrote that definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement. When you know what you want, when you see it clearly, every act of discipline becomes a step toward freedom. The second pillar of the code is consistency. A man who never breaks is not the man who tries hard for a week and then collapses. He is the man who does small things every day without fail until they become unshakable habits. He does not wake up early once, he wakes up early always. He does not work hard when it is convenient. He works hard regardless of convenience. He does not train his body when he feels motivated. He trains his body because it is the law of his life. And because he obeys these laws without exception, they become automatic. His discipline becomes his identity. The third pillar is resilience. Every man will fall. Every disciplined man will face failure. but what separates the unbreakable. From the broken is the ability to rise again, to reassert the code, to return to the path without self-pity. Weak men use failure as an excuse to stop. Strong men use failure as fuel to restart. The code demands that you never surrender to a single loss, that you never allow one moment of weakness to define you. Discipline is not perfection. It is persistence. The fourth pillar is restraint. A disciplined man knows how to say no. He knows how to control his tongue, control his appetites, control his reactions. He understands that not every opportunity is worthy of pursuit. Not every battle is worthy of his energy. Not every word is worthy of his voice. Restraint is the proof of discipline. Because if you cannot say no, your yes means nothing. And if your yes means nothing, your life will be wasted on trivialities. The fifth pillar is sacrifice. Discipline always demands that you give up something today in order to gain something greater tomorrow. The man who never breaks has learned to endure the pain of discipline instead of the pain of regret. He understands that short-term comfort is the enemy of long-term greatness. He gives up sleep to pursue his vision. He gives up indulgence to build his strength. He gives up distraction to cultivate his focus. Sacrifice is the price of unshakable discipline, and only men who pay it. Rise above mediocrity, and let me make this clear. The code of men who never break is not something you visit when it is convenient. It is something you become. Once you live by the code, it ceases to be external rules and becomes your very nature. You do not wake up debating whether to obey. You wake up as the man who has already decided. Discipline ceases to be an effort and becomes an instinct. This is what it means to be unstoppable. Now I will leave you with this truth. The world will try to bend you. Life will try to break you. But if you embrace the code, if you choose discipline not as a tool, but as your identity, then you will become untouchable. You will become the kind of man history remembers, the kind of man storms cannot move, the kind of man who never breaks. This is the beginning. This is the foundation. This is the code. Asterisk, if you want to live by the code of men who never break, you cannot simply admire it from afar. You must take it into your own blood, carve it into your bones, and make it the unseen architecture of your every decision. Discipline is not theory. It is not a word to recite when life feels hard. It is a daily execution of principles so exact and so consistent that they forge a man who cannot be shaken. The code is lived, not spoken. The code is proven, not announced. Let use now dissect what this looks like in practice. Consider the great leaders of industry, the men like Andrew Carnegie, who rose from poverty in a one-room Scottish cottage to become the steel king of America. Carnegie's genius was not only in vision, but in the relentless discipline to pursue it. He studied, he observed, he delayed gratification. He worked long hours with an unwavering focus on his purpose. He did not allow temporary setbacks to define him, nor did he seek shortcuts. His discipline in thought and action allowed him to seize opportunities others ignored. This is not a story of luck. This is the code in action. Look also at Thomas Edison, a man who failed thousands of times before perfecting the light bulb. Do you think genius alone could carry him through that many failures? No genius without discipline collapses under the weight of disappointment. What made Edison unstoppable was his refusal to let repeated defeat break his spirit. He had built a code that framed failure as part of the process, not as the end of the road. His discipline allowed him to keep showing up when others quit. And then there is the soldier, the athlete, the monk, the artist, all men who, though different in their fields, become masters only through discipline. The athlete rises at dawn, even when his body aches, because the code demands consistency. The monk sits in silence for hours, training his mind, because the code demands mastery of self. The artist rejects distraction, pouring his entire soul into the canvas, because the code demands focus. Each one learns that discipline is not a chain, but a crown. It is not what limits them, it is what makes them limitless. You must now take these examples and ask yourself, how will you live by the code? The first rule is this: set unbreakable standards for yourself. Not goals that you may or may not pursue, not wishes you hope to achieve, but laws you will not violate. If you say you will wake up at 5, then you wake up at 5 without debate, without excuse, without compromise. If you say you will read an hour a day, then nothing will stop you from reading that hour. If you say you will save a percentage of your income, then that money is untouchable, no matter what temptations arise. Men who never break are men whose standards are laws, not suggestions. The second rule is to design your environment to reinforce your discipline. Too many men rely on willpower alone, and willpower is fragile. Discipline is strengthened when your environment is built for it. Remove distractions from your life. Surround yourself with reminders of your purpose. Create systems that make the right actions automatic. A man who leaves temptation all around him is a man who secretly hopes to fail. But a man who clears his path of obstacles demonstrates that his discipline is not negotiable. The third rule is to embrace discomfort as your daily training ground. Men who never break are men who train in adversity long before the crisis comes. They build their tolerance for pain, their endurance for pressure, their patience in delay. They understand that every time they choose the harder path, they strengthen their spine. Comfort weakens a man. Discomfort forges him. This is why great leaders often seek challenges voluntarily. They know that the man who lives too softly will break when life becomes hard. But the man who trains hard in times of peace will be unshakable. In times of war, the fourth rule is to keep your word, especially to yourself. Nothing destroys discipline faster than self-betrayal. When you say you will do something and fail to do it, you weaken the foundation of your identity. Each broken promise to yourself teaches your mind that you are unreliable, that your word means nothing. But each kept promise, no matter how small, builds unshakable trust in your own strength. A man who always keeps his word becomes impossible to manipulate because he is built on certainty. The fifth rule is to measure yourself not by feelings, but by actions. Weak men live in the realm of feelings. They act only when motivated, only when inspired, only when it feels easy. But men of discipline act regardless of feelings. They act because it is law, not because it is convenient. This is what makes them unstoppable. While the masses wait to feel ready, the disciplined man acts, and his action creates results. Feelings are fragile. Actions are eternal. Let us go even deeper. The code of discipline does not end with personal habits. It extends into every arena of your life. It governs how you manage your time, how you spend your energy, how you treat your body, how you invest your money, how you build your relationships. Discipline means you do not waste hours in gossip or distraction, because time is the one resource you can never regain. Discipline means you train your body as if it were a temple, because weakness of body creates weakness of mind. Discipline means you save and invest rather than squander, because financial chaos is the enemy of freedom. Discipline means you choose relationships carefully, surrounding yourself with allies who strengthen your mission rather than enemies who dilute it. And when life tests you, as it surely will, discipline is what decides whether you stand or collapse. A man without discipline crumbles when the storm arrives because he has no foundation. But the man of discipline, the man who lives by the code, he remains unbroken because the storm finds no weakness in him. His habits carry him through the darkness. His standards hold him steady. His resilience becomes his shield. This is why discipline is not just a tool for success, it is survival itself. I must remind you of this. Living by the code is not easy. It is not meant to be easy. Discipline will cost you comfort, friends, indulgence, sleep, pleasure. But in return, it will give you strength, focus, freedom, respect, and victory. Every man pays a price. The question is only this: will you pay the price of discipline today, or will you pay the price of regret tomorrow? Men who never break choose discipline because they know regret is unbearable. And so, I ask you, how will you begin? What law will you write into your life today? Will you decide that your mornings belong to focus and not to laziness? Will you decide that your evenings belong to growth and not to distraction? Will you decide that your money will build your future and not feed your impulses? The code begins with one decision, then another, then another. And soon, those decisions shape a man who cannot be broken. This is how you build unstoppable discipline. Not in a single day, not in a single act, but in the accumulation of small victories over yourself. Each time you rise when you want to stay down, each time you say no when it would be easier to say yes, each time you persist when others would quit, you are writing the code deeper into your soul. And one day, you will realize that you are no longer forcing discipline. You have become discipline. And when that day comes, you will be unshakable. This is the path of the man who never breaks. This is the code, lived and proven. The true test of discipline is not what you do when the crowd is watching, but what you do in solitude, when no one else will ever know the choices you made. It is easy to appear disciplined when accountability is external, when the coach is observing, when the boss is demanding, when the audience is waiting. But the men who never break are those who build their code in silence, when the world is asleep, when temptation is strongest, when the only witness is the man in the mirror. Andrew Carnegie once remarked that the richest men in the world were not those who sought approval, but those who governed themselves. He understood that the wealth of character discipline in solitude was the foundation upon which material wealth was built. Discipline is not glamorous in the beginning. It looks like a man rising before dawn, unseen and uncelebrated, training his body or feeding his mind. It looks like a man refusing a short-term pleasure that no one else would know he indulged in, simply because his standards are non-negotiable. The world may not applaud him for these invisible victories, but over time, these choices accumulate into a fortress of strength that no storm can breach. The solitude test reveals who you truly are. You may fool others with appearances, but you can never fool yourself. If in private you betray your code, then your discipline is not yet unbreakable. If in solitude you cut corners, indulge weakness, or allow yourself excuses, then the cracks have already formed. Men who never break treat solitude as sacred. They do not waste it. They use it as their training ground, their laboratory, their forge. When no one is watching, they are building the man who will one day be undeniable in public. Discipline in solitude also means mastering your emotions. The world will test you with anger, disappointment, rejection, betrayal. A man without discipline reacts to each wave, tossed back and forth by his feelings. One insult and he explodes. One setback and he collapses. One disappointment and he abandons the mission. But the man who never breaks understands that emotions are impulses, not commands. He disciplines himself to feel deeply, but act wisely. He does not deny emotions, but he governs them. He feels anger, but channels it into action. He feels fear, but moves forward regardless. He feels despair, but does not let despair dictate his choices. This emotional discipline is perhaps the hardest of all, because the enemy is invisible. The enemy lives inside. It is easier to fight distractions in the world than to fight doubt in your own mind. But the man who never breaks chooses the harder fight. He watches his thoughts, challenges his weaknesses, and refuses to let temporary feelings decide his permanent direction. This is how legends are forged, not by eliminating fear, but by disciplining themselves to move forward in spite of it. Consider the story of Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years. Stripped of freedom, isolated from his people, he lived in conditions that would have broken most men. But Mandela did not let bitterness destroy him. He did not surrender his will to despair. In solitude, he disciplined his mind, studied his enemy, and envisioned the South Africa he would one day lead. He emerged not broken, but stronger proof that the code, when written deep enough into the soul, can outlast even decades of chains. Now, let us turn to the idea of legacy. Men who live by the code understand that their discipline is not only about their own success, it is about building something that will outlast them. Weak men live only for the moment, seeking comfort today, even if it means regret tomorrow. But disciplined men live for the future, willing to sacrifice present ease for lasting impact. They know that every act of discipline is not only shaping them, but shaping the world they will leave behind. Look at the empire builders. Henry Ford did not work tirelessly to simply build cars. He built a system that would transform industries for generations. His discipline in perfecting efficiency, in streamlining processes, created not just wealth for himself, but a new standard for the entire world. His legacy continues because he chose discipline over indulgence. He chose to build beyond himself. And so must you. When you embrace the code of discipline, you are not only deciding who you will become, you are deciding what mark you will leave on history. Every day of discipline adds another stone to the monument of your legacy. Will that monument be strong, admired, remembered? Or will it crumble because you refuse to sacrifice fleeting pleasures? The answer depends entirely on the discipline you practice today. The world will try to distract you with applause, with temptation, with comfort. It will whisper that discipline is too strict, that you should relax, that you should indulge. But the world is wrong. The world belongs to those who can say no when others say yes, who can wait when others rush, who can persist when others quit. Discipline is not slavery. Discipline is the only true freedom, because it liberates you from the chains of weakness, from the prison of impulses, from the slavery of distractions. Men who never break understand this truth. The strongest chains are not the ones life places on you, but the ones you place on yourself. But when those chains are forged in discipline, they do not imprison you, they empower you. They keep you focused, they keep you aligned, they keep you powerful. Now ask yourself, what chains have you forged? Are they chains of weakness, binding you to habits that destroy your future? Or are they chains of discipline, anchoring you to a code that builds unstoppable strength? The choice is yours. But remember this: whatever chains you accept today will decide the man you become tomorrow. Discipline in solitude, discipline of emotions, discipline for legacy. These are the pillars of the code of men who never break. And when you begin to live them, not speak them, not admire them, but live them, you will discover that your life takes on a clarity, a force, a direction that no one can deny. The world will look at you and see a man they cannot manipulate, cannot discourage, cannot break. And that is the highest power any man can achieve. Discipline is not a mystery. It is not reserved for the gifted few or the lucky. It is a science, a structure, a code that any man can adopt if he is willing to pay the price. The question is not whether you can become disciplined, it is whether you will. And if you are willing, then the path is clear. The men who never break have left us a blueprint. If you study their lives, you will see that discipline is built not by accident, but by daily, deliberate action. The formula is silent, but it is exact. The first daily discipline of men who never break is the mastery of mornings. Every day begins with a battle, and the man who wins the morning wins the day. Weak men wake up reacting, scrolling their phones, hitting snooze, delaying responsibility. Disciplined men wake up with intention. Before the world's noise can invade their minds, they take command. Some use meditation, others prayer, others physical training, but the principle is the same. They start the day by declaring, "I rule myself." If you can win the first hour, you can dominate the rest. If you lose the first hour, the day belongs to distraction. The second daily discipline is the governance of body. You cannot be mentally unbreakable if you are physically weak. The body is the servant of the will, but if neglected, it becomes a tyrant. Men who never break train not for vanity, but for mastery. They discipline their muscles, their lungs, their endurance, because every drop of sweat shed in training hardens the mind for life's battles. They eat not for pleasure alone, but for fuel. They sleep not out of laziness, but to recover, like warriors preparing for the next fight. Your body is not your prison, it is your weapon. Discipline it daily, and it will serve you when others collapse. The third daily discipline is the stewardship of mind. Thoughts are the architects of destiny. If you allow weak thoughts, you will live a weak life. Men who never break are ruthless about what they allow into their minds. They read material that strengthens vision, not gossip that weakens it. They study principles, not trends. They guard their mental environment as carefully as a general guards a fortress. Each day, they feed their mind with clarity, with wisdom, with strategy. And because of this, their decisions are not reactions. They are calculated moves, aligned with their purpose. The fourth daily discipline is focus. The world is engineered to scatter your attention, to enslave you to distraction, to keep you too busy to build anything great. Men who never break refuse this trap. They choose their priorities with precision. They know that doing 10 things poorly is worse than doing 3 things with mastery. They eliminate what does not serve their vision, no matter how attractive it looks in the moment. Each day, they create time blocks for deep work, uninterrupted, undistracted, absolute focus. This focus is the secret weapon of all empire builders. Because while others are drowning in triviality, the disciplined man is stacking bricks of greatness, 1 hour at a time. The fifth daily discipline is mastery of speech. Words are not toys, they are weapons. Weak men speak carelessly, scattering their energy, revealing their plans, seeking validation. Disciplined men speak with intention. They know when to be silent and when to speak. They use words to build, not to boast. They refuse gossip, refuse excuses, refuse to waste breath on trivialities. Each day, they practice restraint, for the man who can master his tongue can master his destiny. The sixth daily discipline is reflection. At the end of the day, men who never break review their actions. They do not simply collapse into sleep. They measure. Did I live according to my code today? Did I advance my vision, or did I betray it? Where did I win? Where must I improve? This daily reflection sharpens the edge. It prevents drift. It keeps the code alive. Without reflection, a man may stray for years without realizing it. With reflection, correction is immediate. Growth is inevitable. The seventh daily discipline is gratitude. This may sound soft, but it is iron. Gratitude keeps arrogance away and keeps endurance alive. A man who sees only what he lacks becomes bitter. A man who honors what he has becomes resilient. Gratitude disciplines the heart. It reminds you that even in struggle, there is strength. Even in pain, there is progress. Men who never break are not complainers. They are grateful warriors who see every obstacle as fuel. These daily practices form the core, but there is more. Discipline also demands environment design. You cannot claim to be disciplined if your surroundings constantly betray you. Men who never break shape their environments to protect their focus. They keep their spaces clean, organized, free from unnecessary clutter. They surround themselves with reminders of vision, not symbols of distraction. They choose relationships carefully, because people are environments too. If you walk with the undisciplined, their weakness will infect you. If you walk with the disciplined, their strength will sharpen you. Another secret: men who never break embrace rituals. Rituals are discipline automated. When a behavior is repeated long enough, it ceases to require debate. It becomes law. For example, a man who trains every morning at the same hour does not waste willpower deciding whether to train. He simply obeys the ritual. A man who writes or studies at the same time each day does not argue with himself. He follows the law of his life. Rituals remove choice, and that is their power. Because choice invites weakness, but law produces freedom. And finally, men who never break cultivate endurance. Discipline is not about one day of strength. It is about decades of persistence. Anyone can be disciplined for a week. Few can be disciplined for a lifetime. The code demands that you pace yourself, that you understand seasons. There will be days of fire, days of fatigue, days of triumph, days of loss. But the man who never breaks does not let any day, good or bad, determine his commitment. He is steady. He is consistent. He is a rock in the storm. So how do you begin? You begin by writing your own code. Take a page, a journal, a document, and declare, "These are the laws I live by." Keep it simple. 3 to 5 non-negotiable rules. For example, I wake early. I train daily. I guard my speech. I reflect nightly. I never complain. And live them without exception. When you fail, return. When you fall, rise. Over time, these small laws will shape your identity. And once your identity is forged in discipline, breaking becomes impossible. Understand this. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about loyalty. Loyalty to your vision. Loyalty to your code. Loyalty to your future self. Every act of discipline is an act of loyalty. Every betrayal of discipline is an act of disloyalty. Who will you be loyal to, the man you are today, or the man you must become? The men who never break are not extraordinary. They are simply loyal. Loyal to the code, loyal to discipline, loyal to destiny. And because of this, the world cannot bend them, cannot shake them, cannot defeat them. This is the practical path. This is how discipline is lived, not in theory, but in the grind of daily life. Build these practices, obey this structure, and soon the world will look at you and see not just another man, but an immovable force. Asterisk. Code of men who never break is not written in stone somewhere outside of you. It is carved inside of you, day after day, choice after choice. You already hold the pen. Every morning you decide, will I obey my distractions, or will I obey my destiny? Every night you decide, will I end the day drifting, or will I end it sharpening? The code is forged in these small, repeated decisions, and here is the truth. The world is waiting to see if you will become one of the few. Most men will break. Most men will quit. Most men will live lives of compromise, half built, half lived, half dead. But you are not most men. You are being called to something greater, to become a man whose word is law, whose discipline is unshakable, whose presence commands respect without demanding it. Never forget. Discipline is freedom. Discipline is power. Discipline is immortality. When you live by the code, you rise above the noise. You transcend mediocrity. You become untouchable. This is how empires are built, how legacies are written, how ordinary men are remembered as legends. So now the decision is yours. Will you keep drifting, or will you commit fully to the code? Write your rules. Obey them. Endure. Become unbreakable. And if this message has struck something deep inside you, then take action now. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with another man who needs this wisdom. By doing so, you join a brotherhood of men building discipline that cannot be broken. Men who are rising quietly but powerfully. Men who will not fade into the background of history. Subscribe today, turn on notifications, and come back daily for Napoleon Hill style wisdom that reshapes your thinking, rebuilds your discipline, and makes your rise inevitable. This is your moment. Claim the code. Leave unbreakable.